Hello, welcome to Underlords Universe. I'm a member of the Underlords of the Overworld, which is a creative conclave of like-minded individualists who write and record our own music and novels and stories and such. But if you stumbled across this, that's not why you're here. So if you stick around, more on that in a bit. I'm by myself today. Normally I have one or two of my colleagues along with me. My brother Brent is usually with me for some of this stuff, but I kind of purposely avoided him today because he's a huge Kiss fan, and this was just released on Record Store Day, Eric Carr, Unfinished Business. And so I'd like to do a little bit of this just to kind of make him jealous because he didn't get it. He didn't get this. So I made some notes. If anybody's a big Kiss fan, a big Eric Carr fan, and they are interested in checking this out, seeing if they can still find a copy. Obviously, a lot of the Record Store Day stuff is, kind of here and gone and kind of hard to find afterwards. I know at least in the Des Moines area, I think pretty much every copy of this was sold out by the end of the day. So, but at any rate, yeah, it's an interesting compilation. First of all, it's a reissue with some bonus material. So first, a little bit about the packaging. Obviously, it's a takeoff of the Creatures of the Night kind of cover, and I'll see if I can get this going. The eyes, there it goes. Look at that! Isn't that fancy? And I think they last. I think they stay glowing for about 15 seconds or so, and then they'll turn back off. And they've got a little USB power thing on the side there. So at any rate, it's a really nice looking package, especially since, given the fact that it's not issued by a major label. It's really, really well done. There the eyes go again. Okay, so that's one of the main things about this particular set is kind of that little gimmick. As far as the other stuff that's in here, the album itself on vinyl, there is a CD version of this floating around as well, and the vinyl. Let's set this over here. Two discs. It's Eric back in his days as the Fox. Liner notes. This does not have the what is it called, the polypropylene, if I'm saying that correctly, the real nice liner. I wish it did, because it's kind of a pretty blue vinyl in there. You can see that, but I'm going to refrain from pulling these out because the way this paper just kind of seals itself to the vinyl. It's not something I'm a real big fan of. It's that kind of that static cling connection. Disc 2 is a yellow vinyl. All of the material on the first disc is available for streaming because it was part of a previous release. So this is just a re-release. It's the stuff that's on this bonus disc, which is kind of cool. The other thing I think is really neat about this, though, I'm not a big fan of the posters that come with a lot of these kinds of deluxe sets. Usually it's just kind of like, oh, okay, poster, fold it up and keep it with the, with the art, with the packaging that the album came with. But this one is, I think that's really pretty darn cool. And I'm considering actually getting a frame for it and putting it somewhere, because I think that's just dandy. So nice job on the poster, at least from my perspective. Art's a subjective thing. Somebody else might look at that and go, oh my God, that's ugly. Keep it in the package and never look at it again. But I like it. So that's it, though, as far as the album packaging. There's nothing else that goes with it aside from, like I said, that little glowing eye gimmick. But it's well constructed. This is a nice package if you're a huge Kiss or Eric Carr fan. So a few things about the content that's inside here. So It's a bit of a hodgepodge, kind of a mismatch of stuff. But as I kind of gave it a chance, I kind of found some value in there that I really wasn't expecting. So the first, the tunes are kind of interspersed with little segments of Eric Carr making comments about different things from previous just little audio recordings. The first song is called Just Can't Wait. It was written by Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick, and Adam Mitchell, who also did some co-writing on Killers, Creatures of the Night, Crazy Nights, and Hot in the Shade. And the vocalist on that first track, Just Can't Wait, as an Eric Carr fan, I wish it was Eric Carr singing it, but it's not. It's a guy named Ted Poley, I think, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and he ended up in the band Danger Danger. The second tune is what kind of drew my attention. Not because I actually loved the tune at first, actually, but because it's written by Eric Carr and Mitch Weissman. And Mitch Weissman was in Beatlemania, and he also did backing vocals on Mr. Make Believe, Always Near You, Nowhere to Hide, and See You Tonight from Gene Simmons' 1978 solo album. So I just think, as a fan, as a completist, I think it's kind of cool that you've got a song here written with Eric Carr and Mitch Weissman, when Mitch Weissman had previously worked with Gene Simmons, several years before Eric ever joined Kiss, which I just think is kind of a cool little thing. And also on top of that, the vocals are done by Mitch Weissman as well, so that's kind of cool. There's also the demo of the song Little Caesar. It's titled here No One's Messing With You, but it's what became Little Caesar. It's got pretty much the same exact structure and arrangement. Some of the vocal melodies are a little different in spots, but it's by and large the same. The verses have different lyrics, though. Again, as a completist, it's just kind of cool for me to hear, that early version of the song. And I have to admit that I just didn't, when this album came out in a prior edition, I didn't really give it the attention that I should have given it. There's a version of Shandy also on this album, which Kiss fans know was on Unmasked and features, Paul Stanley, because he wrote it, but not this version. This is Eric Carr on vocals, and apparently this comes from the 1980 audition tape. And what they had done is somehow lifted Eric Carr's vocal audition that he did with this song with his version of Shandy, and then new music was constructed underneath it. And I have to say, it's really pretty well done. I think Eric's vocal is pretty darn good on it. There might be some areas where I don't want to say he's pitchy. It's more about his enunciation that like words like pretend rather than pretend, little things like that. But hey, it's an audition tape that's been kind of elevated, and I think they did a really nice job. There's also basically a cover of Car Jam 1981, which, as Kiss fans know, comes from what is the Elder Sessions, and then it was done as kind of a nod to Eric Carr after his death, with Bruce Kulick doing some guitar solos over it, and it was put on the Revenge album. Here, it's just essentially, but if I'm reading the liner notes correctly, it's essentially a cover by a band called ZO2. And that band, ZO2, also covers All Hell's Breaking Loose on this. Those two seem like the outlier to me, because all of the other pieces at least have some element of Eric Carr themselves in the recording. Not so for those two. Another exception to that, though, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, is a song called Elephant Man, which it doesn't have Eric on it, but it's an interesting little background to that song. The song Elephant Man, the lyric actually to it was written in 1991, and that's the year Eric passed away. Later on, music was written to it by a musician named Bob Gilmartin, and he did most of the guitar and the vocal for Elephant Man. I think it's actually a really good song. The drums are also done by AJ Pero from Twisted Sister, of course. So that's also another song where it's Eric. He wrote it. It's based off a lyric he wrote, So he's not actually on the song itself, but I give this one a little bit of a pass because unlike All Hell's Breaking Loose and Car Jam 1981, I mean, it's not a cover in the sense that, well, here's kind of a new song, new in quotes, of course. Dial L for Love is another song written by Eric Carr and Adam Mitchell. It has a completely ridiculous title. That's so 1980s. The song sounds very, very 80s, but it's incomplete. It doesn't have an actual vocal on it. It's just the music. There's also a song called Midnight Stranger, which is lifted from an old cassette, and it sounds like it. It almost sounds like there's an early like drum pad or drum machine kind of sound to it, and a very kind of Stratocaster kind of sounding guitar over it. If you like listening to those, kind of almost garage type origin recordings, that would fall into that category. And then there's a tune called Eyes of Love, which again is very, very 80s in its style. It's written by Eric, Bruce Kulick, and Adam Mitchell. I think, overall, it's one of the better songs on the record if you kind of consider the time frame that it was written in. Eric is on the lead vocals on that one, so that's another reason why I like it, because I do like his voice quite a lot. And all the other instruments of that are kind of done by some other folks, but it's Eric's vocal on that song, Eyes of Love. And then you get one of the gems on the record, I think, it's called Through the Years. And looking at the back cover, I was like, Through the Years. I had never really listened to that. And it actually it's basically just a drum solo. But the cool thing about it is it starts about the first 20 seconds of it. It's Eric in his basement as a 17-year-old practicing his drums. And then it segues over into a recording of one of his drum solos when he was with Kiss, which that's just a cool juxtaposition to me as a listener. And I know that Eric Carr, he wasn't Neil Peart, but I loved Eric's drum solos. I loved watching him play the drums. I thought he had there was just an essence about the way he played drums, and I loved his drum solo when he put those electronic drum pads in there, and this has that. So that's, I think, a real gem. And then it closes with a piece called I Cry at Night, which goes back to 1967. And some folks might not be aware, because Eric is actually older, for example, than Paul Stanley by like a year and a half. Paul was born in early 1952, and Eric is born in 1950. And so Eric's actually doing music, way back in the early days, like those guys were. And this song, I Cry at Night, it's apparently written by Eric. The vocal and the drums are by Eric. And it's a pretty good recording for given its time. But the funny thing to me is that even though it's 1967, the song itself sounds very 50s-ish. And it's a cool little tune. And that closes the proper album. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you can find that on Spotify. This is just a reissue of this album that had been called Unfinished Business. Then you get into the bonus audio, the second disc, and you get another song from this time 1968. It's called I Found You. And you get also Down by the River by the band he was in, and changed their name to Salt and Pepper by 1974. It's basically a cover band by and large. Salt and Pepper was. Then they changed their name again, as far as I understand it, to a band called Creation. And this is, as far as I can understand, as far as I can tell, this is a song. It's called Get Down, and it's written by John Henderson. John Henderson was the band's vocalist. So this looks to me like, just a straight up original from a pre-Kiss Eric Carr band, which is kind of cool. And as I was looking through some of the background on this, kind of a neat little story here. Apparently the band had played at a nightclub that had a deadly nightclub fire. And, a couple people had died. But Eric himself apparently had saved the life of the vocalist, John Henderson, and his wife, Sarita Henderson, who was also in the band, apparently. And, that's just kind of a cool little bit of context for what was kind of going on at the time for Eric and the bands he was playing in. But the song itself is called, it's called Get Down. It's really funky. It's got horn sections, got a really funky bass line to it. It's a killer tune. It's not the highest quality recording, but it's good enough to really get a sense of just how good that band actually was. And you also get a cover of Black Magic Woman, the Peter Green Fleetwood Mac tune, as well as a recording of Listen to the Music, which it's listed. Yeah, it's only listed as Listen to the Music, but it's actually Listen to the Music and Long Train Running. It's both of them. And it sounds to me like it's almost like recorded live in a club. But again, the quality of the recording is actually pretty good for a recording that's that old. That's almost certainly an amateur recording, but it sounds pretty darn good. And it's very, very listenable. I think, when I picked this up, and admittedly, again, I hadn't listened to the previous edition of it, I was kind of skeptical as far as what I would think of the overall contents. I knew the packaging was cool. I knew I liked that. I knew I wanted that on my shelf with everything else. But I'm pleasantly surprised about the content, the insides. And, if you're an Eric Carr fan, if you're a Kiss completist, you might want to seek out this new edition of Eric Carr Unfinished Business. Speaking of unfinished business, like I said at the beginning, my colleagues and I, we're part of a project called Underlords of the Overworld, and we call ourselves that. It's just kind of a fancy way of saying underdogs, or kind of, we see ourselves as unsung heroes to some degree in our own little world. And we're going to put some links below if anybody's curious about checking out our stuff. We have our in-house author, H. Prescott Lemon, who has written a fictional series, which is like a alternate universe background of the band, and a secret society called the OAO. It's just good stuff. We like being creative. We like doing creative stuff, and we like throwing it out there to see if there's anybody out there who might be interested in checking it out. And one final thought, back to Eric Carr. It's just kind of cool to see that the family of Eric Carr keeps his name alive, and they keep doing this kind of thing. There's a picture of me and Eric back in 1987, Vets Auditorium in Des Moines. That building is no longer even used as an arena. It's completely gutted and completely different on the inside now, but it seems just like yesterday. I can remember 1991. I can remember the news of his death on the same day that Freddie Mercury passed away, and it just seems like yesterday. Wow, it's weird. So it's cool to have something like this. Again, if you're a Kiss completist, Eric Carr fan, see if you can find a copy and check our stuff out. We'd really appreciate it. I'll put a link below to our newest release, which is just a single called Ordo Abstrusus Oculus, which is the name of the OAO, Ordo Abstrusus Oculus, a secret society that H. Prescott Lemon writes about in that series. And that song features former Iron Maiden vocalist Blaze Bayley, which we had just a thrill having him do a vocal for us. So it was really, really fun, really great. I think it turned out awesome. Of course, I'm biased, but if you stuck with me for this and you like what you see, please subscribe. Ask for the notifications by ringing the little bell. Put some comments. If you're an Eric Carr fan, love to hear what you have to say. If you're a Kiss fan, love to hear what you have to say. If you're interested in independent local artists, pick up our stuff, check our stuff out, and we really appreciate it. So in the meantime, I'm going to sign off, but the next time I'm out, I probably will have my colleagues with me because I much prefer to do this stuff with them. So until next time, ciao.